On this edition of The Fifth Estate, wood from BC is being burned for fuel in the United Kingdom.
We're on the verge of losing these forests, literally on the verge of complete destruction.
The landscape scarred with clear-cut after clear-cut. And in the middle of it, a UK company hungry for more.
We've got a power station that's burning 25 million trees a year.
But at what cost to BC's forests?
The claims that these companies are making that they're green and sustainable, this really turns that into a massive lie.
We're creating local jobs, directly and indirectly, and we're creating a product that goes to offset coal.
We need to see it for what it is. It's a money-making machine for a few people.
And who is really calling the shots in British Columbia?
This government, this institution in British Columbia is entirely captured by industry.
I'm Lindsay Duncombe in northern England. This is the largest power plant in the United Kingdom. It burns wood pellets, including shipments that come all the way from Canada. It's been sold to Britons as green energy, just a way to use scraps from the lumber industry. A win-win for the environment. We traced those shipments back to British Columbia and discovered that what's happening in the Canadian forest doesn't live up to those green promises. This is the Fifth Estate.
Northern England. A 57-year-old protester stops a barreling freight train. She climbs on top, sounding an alarm about a Canadian industry most of us haven't heard of.
So this is what a Drax biofuel train looks like. Little people, we have to step up and bang the drum and demand that the brakes are slammed on the destruction of our planet. If we don't slam on the
Desperation motivated by the United Kingdom's frantic need for electricity. The UK, like all of Europe, is in an energy crisis. Household electricity bills tripled, making the country more reliant on Drax power station. It burns wood, processed into pellets, shipped from all over the world. An undertaking so huge, it was featured on the TV show Mega Shippers.
The overdue load is 55,000 tons of wood pellets, vital fuel for the mammoth Drax power station, the UK's largest power plant.
British Columbia.
Britain cut down its forests centuries ago. So to feed that hungry power station, Drax is shopping for wood in British Columbia. BC's tourism videos are full of trees. This is the image BC presents to the world.
Supernatural. British Columbia.
Once again, we thank you for your free discovery on board with us today.
But when you fly from Vancouver to the interior, a different picture emerges. All those light-colored patches used to be forest. Now they are clear cuts, every tree taken. I want to find out, where then is Drax getting all the wood it's burning in England? I get to Quesnel in time for the summer fair. The forest industry built this town. It's hard to avoid the sense things here are not what they used to be. Bob Simpson is the mayor of Quesnel.
The BC forest industry just now is in survival mode. They're all eyeballing each other as to who's going to be the last mill standing.
This is what forests around Quesnel looked like from space 2 decades ago. Look what happens after a pine beetle outbreak infected the trees. The BC government allowed logging to ramp way up to get rid of all those dead trees. It was called a gold rush for the forest industry. And for a time, the sawmills were buzzing.
You had then sawmill waste like we had never experienced before, and they couldn't bring all the wood in, so now you had bush waste like we had never had before. And along comes the pellet industry saying, we've got a solution to that.
Wood pellets. Few people know how useful they truly are, or how vital they are for supplying us with energy.
This industry video says wood pellets are made from sawdust from lumber mills and what they call waste from the forest.
We also use harvesting residuals, like the branches or tops left behind after felling.
So we're talking about waste materials that are left in the forest.
To hear the wood pellet industry tell it, they're doing British Columbians a favor, using up these piles of waste left behind by the logging industry, tops of trees and branches.
This is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. So these are wood pellets, and effectively the process is, or was supposed to be, that the makeup of these pellets would be the fines from wood waste.
But by 2020, the logging bonanza was over. Clear cuts had devastated the forest. Fewer trees, fewer sawmills, less waste. A problem for Drax.
I could see down the road that wood waste that you're building this industry on is not going to be there. So how are you going to feed that industry? And the industry started to grow fairly exponentially.
It will be your grandchildren's forest industry if we manage it correctly.
And the BC government is all in. Premier John Horgan calls the expansion of the pellet industry a win-win. Pellets, part of a growing bioeconomy that Horgan promised to do more to support.
Innovative BC firms need access to more fiber than they've had in the past.
If I'm suggesting that a tree can be harvested, I want to see that tree utilized to its maximum potential.
That's BC's longtime chief forester Diane Nichols, appearing in a wood pellet industry video.
And it also is starting to use harvest residuals that we know is not being used currently. And that is a win.
Finding overseas markets for pellets, part of Nichols' forest management strategy.
She's one of the ultimate arbiters of how the forest is used and who gets access to the forest and, you know, what's accessible.
Michelle Connolly is a forest ecologist. She doesn't buy the Horgan government's message, and she's been investigating Drax and the wood pellet industry for years. One day, Connolly got a clue that made her worry a wood pellet company was cutting down whole trees.
We were exploring an area of rainforest about an hour east of our community of Prince George, and we encountered some flagging tape that had the name of a pellet company on it. It was tied to a tree, and there was an area that looked like it was getting ready to be logged.
Connolly did some digging. She learned a wood pellet manufacturer in Prince George had been given permission to turn entire hemlock trees into pellets, not just those tops and branches.
I couldn't really believe it. We hadn't realized that that certain primary forests were actually going to get logged, and most of them were going into pellet plants. The pellet industry could be a vacuum for all our remaining primary forests, and that's what became our biggest fear when we realized that the chief forester herself was actually promoting it.
Connolly takes me deep into the inland rainforest.
I'm taking my time here.
She doesn't believe anything in the forest is waste.
This is an old hemlock, western hemlock tree. Yeah.
How old, Michelle, do you think?
Well, we would have to core it to figure that out. I mean, it's probably, you know, like over 200 years old.
Yeah.
The province of BC has dubbed forests like this that are dominated by hemlock to be waste. They've actually named them as waste because they can't necessarily be used for other things.
Connolly says these trees provide habitat for birds and animals and are crucial to the biodiversity of the forest. Connolly wanted to know what else had the BC government given the pellet industry. She teamed up with a Victoria journalist, Ben Parfitt, who dug deep into provincial databases.
So this is all data that I extracted from a provincial government database called the Harvest Billing System.
Okay. And that's when they realized BC's largest wood pellet manufacturer, Pinnacle, had in fact received several permits to log old growth or primary forests, paying fees to the province for the trees they cut.
So, you know, you can't get any more direct evidence than this. Quite frankly, I thought I'd hit gold. I mean, you know, here's proof that the pellet industry, which is claiming to have no interest in taking wood from trees and only wants to work with junk. Well, how do you explain this?
So you make this discovery, you realize that this industry, which has said it's built on collecting waste, is actually involved in logging. What did you do about it?
We realized we had to go public with what was happening. The pellet industry in BC is set to expand in a big way, and the only way they can do it is if the BC government continues to allow the logging of primary forests for this purpose, and this has to stop.
A lot of people are going to be scratching their heads saying, so help me understand this, you're actually logging good forests, and you're actually taking that stuff and pelletizing, and you're actually burning it? Are we living back in the dark ages where that's what we used to do, is go out to the forest to get stuff to burn?
This is the reality of BC's pellet industry. Logs, row upon row, ready to be chopped up, shipped overseas to burn. Last year, Drax bought the largest pellet manufacturer in BC. Now it's the biggest player in the province, and that power plant in England is hungry for wood. When we come back, the British fight to protect BC's forests.
We're about 5 minutes away from Drax power station.
Drax is the largest carbon emitter in the UK. It's complete greenwashing, it's a scam, it's a waste of public money.
Climate change is hitting British Columbians hard. Floods, fires, landslides. The United Kingdom can relate, as a changing climate brings heat wave after deadly heat wave.
The UK in particular are not ready for 40 degrees heat.
The UK has promised to tackle carbon emissions and says Drax Power Station is going to help. It burns wood, including pellets from British Columbia. But those green promises are meeting stiff opposition. A growing movement to stop Drax is gaining traction.
Drax is the largest carbon emitter in the UK. It's complete greenwashing, it's a scam, it's a waste of public money.
We're about 5 minutes away from Drax power station, but you can already see it on the horizon.
Each one of those steaming towers is larger than the Statue of Liberty. I want to meet the people who are trying to shut down Drax and save trees from British Columbia. Mary Dickinson and Joe Irving are part of a group called Axe Drax. Dickinson and Irving staged their battle against Britain's largest power station from the historic city of York. They're young, they're idealistic, but they're not alone. Their fight is gaining momentum.
This is the world's biggest burner of trees, this company. They are the UK's single largest carbon emitter, and you only do that by being absolutely massive. Canadians, I think, first of all, they just need to be aware of what is happening. These forests are the lungs of the earth, right? They need to protect their forests, and I think, do what they can to stop it there, and we'll do what we can to stop it here.
For Mary Dickinson, that means direct action like this, spray painting buildings.
What Drax won't tell you is that biomass is incredibly destructive. It's not green energy. It shouldn't be considered renewable.
Does anyone know his name so we can get him down?
Confronting authority.
Just going to ignore me.
And getting arrested.
You guys are from the UK, you live here in the York area. Why do you care about Canadian wood?
First of all, it's our government and corporations based in our country that are doing this harm. They're the ones funding the cutting down of these trees and the burning of them. And then it's also the fact that, you know, this is our planet. And so we all have a duty to care and protect it. And it's, whether it's Canadian wood, American wood, wood from Estonia.
Environmentalists have been fighting Drax for years. The plant used to burn coal, spewing carbon. When the UK pledged to get off coal, Drax looked done. But then, a transformation. Swap coal for wood and call it green.
Climate change is the biggest challenge of our time, and Drax has a crucial role in tackling it.
Central to Drax's green argument is that trees grow back. Fossil fuels don't.
This continuing cycle of growth and regrowth delivers a renewable source of low-carbon energy.
The biomass that we use comes from sustainably managed forests.
They say it's renewable because you can plant a tree and that will, again, restore that carbon sink. Is that a way of describing this as renewable energy?
Not in a way that takes the climate crisis seriously. We know that when you burn a tree and you replant it, it's going to take 44 to 104 years? 44 to 104 years. For the replanted trees or replanted forest, monoculture, to absorb the carbon. You're deluding yourself to call it renewable.
But Drax's argument was convincing enough for the British government. It bought in big time with taxpayer cash. Drax receives £2 million a day in subsidies, £5 billion to date. It even got listed on the S&P Clean Energy Index. Take that green status, add those green subsidies. The result? Profits for the Drax shareholders.
And today we're announcing an interim dividend of 40% of that amount, which is 20 million.
I've been invited to a local pub to meet men and women in the Axe Drax campaign. They're joining Mary Dickinson and Joe Irving in their fight.
For a lot of people, it's very, very hard to face the depth and scale of a climate crisis.
We don't have billions of pounds, we don't have PR companies and all of these things, but what we can do is understand the science, read that, and act in a way that's appropriate to the urgency, to the crisis that we're in right now.
You're putting £2 million a day into burning trees. Well, imagine what you could do with £2 million a day in terms of investing in solar, investing in wind, you know, and being creative with that money.
And we're, at the worst thing, burning the very organisms that are helping us capture carbon dioxide from the environment. It's absolutely insane.
So explain the math to me. How does it work that something that is obviously burning trees, putting carbon into the atmosphere, can be calculated as carbon neutral and renewable? Where's the logic?
You said, where's the logic in it? That's a false assumption. There is actually no fundamental logic to this at all.
Because there's this loophole in European law where you don't actually have to admit to that.
Yes. That loophole she's talking about goes back to 1997. Canada and the United Kingdom were among the signatories to an historic agreement to keep track of global carbon emissions. But when it came to trees, carbon emissions were only counted when the tree was cut down and transported. That meant the burners of wood, like the UK, were off the hook. Scientists now call that an error.
The trouble is that means for countries that are burning biomass, emissions from burning biomass aren't counted at all against their national accounts.
Duncan Brack works with the London think tank Chatham House. He was hired to calculate the yearly carbon emissions coming from burning wood pellets in the United Kingdom, most of it from Drax.
We estimated that that's equivalent to the emissions from between 6 million and 7 million passenger vehicles.
Is burning wood cleaner than coal?
No, it isn't. If you burn wood in the presence of oxygen, it generates more carbon dioxide per unit of energy generated than if you burn almost all types of coal.
He's not the only academic reaching that conclusion. In 2021, more than 500 economists and scientists signed this letter from Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge, and Canadian universities too, demanding an end to wood pellet subsidies, calling burning wood a false solution to the climate crisis. Trees are more valuable alive than dead for both climate and for biodiversity.
So I think they are, there are sort of cracks appearing in the wall, I think. There's more awareness, there are more politicians ready to say this is wrong.
Last year, Drax was dropped from that green stock exchange index. In August of this year, even the Energy Secretary expressed doubts about the industry. Drax shares fell 11%.
We're off to meet a member of Parliament who has raised the issue of Drax Power Station and wood pellets in the House of Commons.
A group of MPs from all parties wrote a letter calling the burning of trees a scandal and questioning subsidies going to Drax. Barry Gardner is one of them.
We've just got to say we got it wrong. Don't be fooled by sustainable biomass. It's not sustainable. In any sense of the word that means anything, it is not sustainable.
He has a message for BC's Premier, John Horgan.
John Horgan called this a win-win for the economy and the environment. What do you make of that?
If this man, John, is the top guy in British Columbia, he needs to think, what is he doing to the biodiversity? I mean, you're such an amazing place in British Columbia. And what are you doing to all the wildlife? It's disaster. Stop it. Stop this clear felling. Stop the biomass industry in its tracks.
All that criticism hasn't escaped Drax's attention. In a report to shareholders, Drax warns of a risk that detractors, environmentalists, might influence politicians, leading to reduced support for the industry. To mitigate this risk of growing opposition, Drax said it is maintaining strong relationships with government officials, including in Canada.
The timber industry and the biomass industry has quite a big hold over governments, particularly in countries with big timber and biomass industries.
Like Canada?
Like Canada, in Europe, like the Nordic states, like the UK.
In April 2022, Drax said it was delighted to announce the newest member of its executive team, BC's Chief Forester, Diane Nichols. Drax wouldn't give us an interview while we were in England. We asked to speak to Nichols.
She is the person that we do want to speak to, so that's what we'd be hoping to arrange in BC.
Yeah, you've stated that very clearly.
When we come back.
So this was all logged, and it was logged by a company that makes pellets.
The claims that these companies are making that they're green and sustainable, this really turns that into a massive lie.
Drax Power Station is hungry for wood. Every day, 20,000 tons of wood pellets arrive, fuel for electricity.
The delivery changes have been huge.
Special storage domes keep the pellets dry. Trains feed the station 14 deliveries each day, carrying wood pellets made from forests around the world, including Brazil, Estonia, the United States, and British Columbia. In the port of Prince Rupert, there's a new terminal built especially for wood pellets, and they're not just going to England anymore. Drax is now exporting BC pellets to Japan and South Korea. In a shareholders report, Drax now says it is operating in regions that include old-growth forests in BC, the industry backed by the Horgan government.
During my virtual trade mission to Japan last month, I pointed to the growing pellet market in Japan as an opportunity for the Canadian bioeconomy.
In Victoria, one member of the legislature is pushing back against the Horgan government's endorsement.
10 million tons of pellets produced per year by Drax.
Adam Olsen is one of 2 Green Party MLAs.
How many publicly owned logs are being turned into wood pellets in British Columbia?
Olsen believes the Horgan government's support for Drax is part of a larger crisis in BC's forests.
This government, this institution in British Columbia is entirely captured by industry. When it comes right down to it, we're still extracting in an unsustainable way here in British Columbia for the benefit somewhere else. It takes just a few minutes in an airplane above this province to really see what's happened over decades here, and it's gross.
We're on our way to a clear-cut location, and it's been linked to the company that is selling wood pellets to Europe.
So we're basically standing here on the road. So
At the start of all the red.
Yeah, all the red is the cut block. So
Ecologist Michelle Connolly uncovered evidence wood pellet companies are taking whole trees from primary forests. She's mapped it all online.
Yeah, well, it'll go even further up. Yeah.
Looks like a moonscape.
Yeah, it does.
I'm gonna put on some bug spray.
Yeah, good call.
This site was logged more than a year ago.
This is a cut block that was logged by Pinnacle/Drax. So they had the right to log this.
This is what the mountain looked like in 2019, untouched primary forest. And this is what it looked like a year later.
It was logged by Pinnacle/Drax, ground up, and then made into pellets and then shipped overseas. This forest was cut in order to, temporarily power people's laptops or, iPhones.
A single tree left standing. Everything else gone. Pellet companies say they take only the lowest grade logs here. Higher value logs are sold to lumber mills and other wood manufacturers. In 2021, Pinnacle, now Drax, paid the BC government more than $2 million to cut down the trees here. It's a long climb to the top. When we get there, a discovery. Tops of trees, branches, even whole logs, heaped together in massive piles.
And the whole pellet industry is about getting rid and using wood waste. And yet, why do we have all this wood waste here?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm as surprised as you are. So this is a mess. This is a slash pile.
They came in, took the trees, and left the waste. The slash piles. Exactly what the pellet industry tells the public it is taking from the forest. Remember their whiteboard video.
We also use harvesting residuals, like the branches or tops left behind after felling.
And what Drax said.
So we're talking about waste materials that are left in the forest, waste materials that come from sawmill residuals, so the larger sawmilling industry. Previous to the wood pellet industry in Western Canada, a lot of this material would get burnt at roadside.
And that was Drax's big selling point, as seen in this industry video. Common logging practice is to burn slash piles on site. The pellet industry was supposed to solve that problem by turning that slash into pellets and shipping it overseas.
The claims that these companies are making that they're green and sustainable, this really turns that into a massive lie.
The Meadowbank pellet mill is a 45-minute drive south of Prince George. Drax bought this plant last year. We've been trying to get an interview with Drax for weeks. They finally set up a tour with Director of Sustainability, Joe Aquino. No sit-down interview.
Why is burning pellets that comes from wood taken from the forests good for the environment?
So if you think about where our raw material originates from, this is material that's sitting in the forest that really would have no other outcome other than to be burnt. About 80% of our material that we use for manufacture wood pellets comes from sawmill residuals. Sawmill residuals being what you see here, and then about 20% of the feedstock is forest-based feedstock. Some in the form of roundwood, and then some in the form of in-woods chipping. This is the term we use.
In-woods chipping, and what parts of the trees is in that bush grind?
It's basically the leftovers that are piled up on the edge of the road. We call them roadside slash piles.
Right, right.
Yeah, so it's the tops, it's the limbs, it's the unusable portions that the sawmilling industry has rejected. It's basically that leftover material.
I want to show you what we saw. We'll get you to look at it there. I have the specific numbers in my phone.
So we're looking at roadside debris.
Yeah.
We show Aquino what we saw on that clear cut. The very slash piles he just said Drax turns into wood pellets. Slash piles left behind after they'd taken the trees.
The block number is A95773. And those are the GPS coordinates there. This is primary forest in a place Pinnacle had the license to log, and it hasn't been picked up.
So it's absolutely important to remember that the pellet industry does not harvest material direct for the pellet industry. I can't speak specifically to the site because pictures, I mean, those can be affiliated with any site.
Drax said they would look into that location and get back to us, but did admit sometimes it's just too expensive to get those slash piles.
And so we can't go 10 hours away from our sawmill and go grind every pile that's out there. Right. The economics just wouldn't allow it. So without knowing details, about the site.
But they don't say that in their videos. We still haven't heard back about that site.
I think we're wrapped up, folks.
There's a very simple reason why most of this material is not picked up. It is too expensive for Pinnacle or Drax to pick it up, which is one of the reasons why so much of the material that ends up at Drax operations is actually whole logs. Drax has made it publicly known that it wants more capacity in Canada, more capacity in British Columbia. It's looking to add another 500,000 tons of production per year.
Yep.
We showed those slash pile pictures to Quesnel Mayor Bob Simpson.
It's a bit ironic that the pellet industry that was designed to extinguish this kind of behavior is creating this kind of behavior out in the bush. It's just wrong on so many fronts. The greenwashing of the pellet industry needs to stop. We need to see it for what it is. It's a money-making machine for a few people based on subsidies in the UK at the expense of British Columbia.
When we come back.
Hello?
Hi, is this Diane Nichols?
Whenever a bureaucrat jumps ship lockstep to an industry that bureaucrat has made decisions about supporting, I think a polite term is messy.
To produce electricity, Drax Power Station needs a growing supply of wood from BC's forests. It now owns 8 pellet plants in British Columbia, the biggest player in an industry dependent on clear-cut logging and what it calls waste from the forest. Scars of that logging visible from space.
We are on the verge of losing it. We're on the verge of losing these forests right now, literally on the verge of complete destruction. Increase in abundance at these areas.
Teresa Ryan is a lecturer in the forestry faculty at the University of British Columbia. She is part of UBC's Mother Tree project.
We have to work together to find solutions to help make our forests resilient as climate changes. We're experimenting with different forest practices. We're testing these different ways of harvesting the forest.
In their video, they compare clear cuts to logging practices that don't take every tree.
The next one is what we call a small patch retention.
So if that is a sustainable way to harvest, to use the trees, why isn't it happening?
The system isn't set up for that. It's set up for the colonial mentality of go in and take, and an endless supply will be there forever. And it's the gold rush thought, right? The gold rush mentality. It's about getting revenues into the government, and it's about profit. The science is clear to stop clear cutting. It's very clear. That's the #1 devastation to the forest because they can't recover. I'm not against harvest. I think harvesting could be done in a much better, much more high-value way than the way that we're doing it now.
But she says the wood pellet industry needs those clear cuts to survive.
We're not talking about just a big tree here and there. We're talking about the whole functioning forest, right? And that's what they're destroying, is a whole functioning forest. It's a part of an ecosystem. And that isn't a sustainable industry.
Oh, this was dense bush.
Mike Morris is looking for solutions too. He's a Liberal MLA for Prince George. He's also a trapper. He takes me to a clear cut that he says is roughly the size of the city of Vancouver, 100 square kilometers.
This would be a sterile environment for many, many years and decades before the habitat would support any marten or fisher or a lot of the other wildlife habitat that we have. Oh, it's heartbreaking. You know, this is province-wide.
Morris is calling for a complete overhaul of the way BC manages forests.
This is a fir.
So this would have been a big fir tree.
Yeah. We need legislative change. We need to eliminate the volume-based logging practices that we have and bring in an ecological-based practice so that all the values on the land are considered when we determine which trees should be harvested and which one shouldn't. It's going to take us, I think that this province is in for probably a 30 to 50 year period of time where very little logging is going to take place because we have simply logged too much.
It's interesting to see how the provincial government sort of pitches its management of the forest. It's managed as the most sustainable forest in the world. Is the provincial government sustainably managing this forest?
No, they're not by a long shot. And it goes back, you know, the forest industry itself and governments of all stripes over the years, like this has been 75 years of a mismanaged strategy, have been perpetuating that myth.
In British Columbia, the chief forester works closely with the government and decides what can be clear-cut and when. Until April 2022, the chief forester was Diane Nichols, advising the Horgan government.
I am Diane Nichols. I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Forester for the province of British Columbia. Roughly 95% of BC's forests are publicly owned and governed by stringent laws and environmental regulation.
This spring, Nichols left the top job managing BC's forests. She is now the Vice President of Sustainability for Drax North America.
I'm stunned, shocked, disappointed. It's a violation of public trust.
What does it tell you about the relationship between government and industry in this province?
It certainly shows how close they are. It shows you that the priorities are upside down.
Hello?
Hi, is this Diane Nichols?
Yes.
I want to ask Nichols about her decisions as chief forester for almost a decade. She says she can't talk to us unless her new employer lets her.
I think the best way to go forward is to go through our media group, Drax, and just put your request in, and then I will go from there.
Drax denied our request. But it did give her permission to speak at the Wood Pellet Association's annual meeting, a chance for executives to hobnob with provincial forestry officials. Drax sponsored this reception. We got advance permission to attend the speeches.
The session that is about to begin was supposed to be moderated by Diane Nichols. She's the former BC Chief Forester. She's currently a Vice President at Drax. Her name is in the program, her picture is in the program, but she's not here.
Organizers later told us she canceled at the last minute. In a recent email, Drax repeated that Diane Nichols would not be speaking with us.
Again, whenever a bureaucrat jumps ship lockstep to an industry that bureaucrat has made decisions about supporting, I think a polite term is messy in that case. You know,
what's an impolite term?
I think scandalous. I think begs an investigation.
We asked Premier John Horgan for an interview too. He declined. In a statement, Forestry Minister Katrine Conroy said former Chief Forester Diane Nichols was instrumental in ushering in a new era of forest management planning and defended the wood pellet industry. BC's pellet sector has helped to reduce waste in the forestry industry and ensure we are using the lowest quality parts of every tree harvested. In August, Drax purchased another pellet plant in British Columbia, part of an ambitious plan to expand production to 8 million tons a year by 2030.